So many people are wondering what will be. Um, so, from a rational perspective, to be perfectly frank, the basically destruction of civilization has begun. Obama, even though he was, according to Egyptian newspaper, really part of the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the largest terrorist organization which act mainly basically to elect Muslims. And according, of course, to Islam, Obama was a Muslim. He was certainly raised in a Muslim country, and he certainly was, from different reports, he engaged in Islam as well. And he certainly put the Muslim Brotherhood into power in Egypt, which was one of the most corrupt things that's possible, putting a terrorist organization in charge of a otherwise secular, normal country, to the extent that Egypt had to condemn the State Department after they had, I think it's Morsi, um, who became the new president. So after they took it back, they had to condemn the State Department because the State Department, the American State Department, was welcoming in the foremost terrorist group. And as we speak right now, they're still in the State Department. Even though Trump tried to get them out, they always, like typical Arab fashion, they say, oh, there are two Muslim brotherhoods. They're all over. They have hundreds of dummy organizations, and they're highly, highly active. However, that Obama still, even with all his devious, diabolical lies, which that's just one of them. Um, the fact of the matter is, he still played a game. He still pretended to be an American. But now we have a new situation. We have a situation where the ideals of Obama, which was radical communism, anti-money, you didn't make that, saying it's businesses. And if you read the Democratic platform, it's basically a what we would call a socialist communist doctrine. It's basically kind of, oh, the oppressed worker, we're all for the oppressed worker, we're against big money. And what that leads to, as we saw in Venezuela, as we saw in Russia, it leads to the destruction of capitalism. The destruction of capitalism doesn't make everybody rich. That's what stupid people think. They think that, oh, the government is going to give us money. But the little secret to the government giving you money is that in order for the government to give you money, the government must collect money, right? It's a very, very simple thing. Income allows out. In goes out, like your bank account. If it can come into your bank account, it can go out of your bank account. But if it doesn't come into your bank account, it doesn't go out of your bank account. There are a lot of very foolish people that don't really know how the world works, and they think that the government has these money trees. Or maybe the white man has this money tree, and all we need to do is just kind of clip off a couple of the leaves. And of course, we'll leave him with one leaf because, he deserves to live too, but at least we'll get that wealth, and that's all we have to do. But the problem with that is that, and I've seen this, I lived in Africa at least for many, many, many years. So that's what happens. All the black governments, they take control, and basically what they do is they just take all the money they can. But what ends up happening is there's no more money left. That actually happened in Russia, where they, expropriated the money, but within 1 or 2 years, everybody's starving, literally starving. So the government is going and literally stealing the cows from farmers because they need to feed the people. So this situation, it's like in Venezuela. I mean, you can't buy soap in the stores, right? Because you can be against money, you can be against business, and you can close it down. You have the power, but then you don't get the soap because the business made the soap. And for the business to run, it has to sell enough soaps to keep on making soap. So the margins of profit are actually quite small. Businesses don't make huge margins. I would say often maybe a 10% margin. So there's a lot of money being churned, a lot of work, a lot of effort just to make that 10%. So we've entered into a reality that from a rational perspective, where now you have the people that really believe, meaning Obama was coming in as like a spy. He was coming in as a person who knew that he was coming from the radical left, and he was going to try to move America to his position. But now you have, as Pew poll, which is a major poll, independent polling, shows that 27% of America are basically Obama cult members. And that makes up 45% of the Democratic Party. So they're the majority or the active part of the Democratic Party. So the Democratic Party now is not a sane party. They are radically evil if you define evil as having basically negative ideas and willing to enforce them through, as communism, through basically tyranny and doing anything in your power, and the means justify the end. And that's really where we're at. And so from a rational perspective, it's just going to be, I don't know, about a year where the monetary system is going to collapse. And just like in Russia, people will be in breadlines. And the result of that will be very sad. I mean, that's what happened. However, that's the bad news. I want to give you the good news. That was just an introduction to the good news. The good news is that it says before Mashiach comes, we will say, Ein lanu lehishoin ela Avinu shebashamayim. I was speaking to a Jew from Russia, and he said clearly that he and his colleagues speak. This is exactly what happened in communism, where there's intolerance, there's a radical ideology, there's a shutdown of other people's speech. This is pure communism. And the bottom line of what he said, and this is a Jew who's secular, he says the only one we can rely on now is God. And that's a good thing. I'll tell you why it's a good thing. Because we only get our salvation when that is where we turn. When we think, oh, Trump is going to save us, well, then God says, okay, well, let him save you. But at the end of the day, the fact of the matter is that when we say there is no other hope, and considering that the House and the Senate and the President are all these radical Democrats, there is only one way, and that way is that God himself, as been predicted, the Rebbe said very clearly that Mashiach is going to come this year, also from the Chassam Sofer, that we are going to be in the Holy Temple. This Nisan, we are going to be sacrificing in the Holy Temple the carbon. We're going to be the real world, the true world, the world of Mashiach is going to come. And the thing is that we all have an obligation, a major obligation, in fact, a major opportunity to make sure that we are ready. That's the job. We have to live, as the Rebbe says, like Mashiach is here right now. We have to live as if there's nothing to worry about. Faith is the key. The key is to believe that everything that happens comes from God. This whole thing came from God. And so why is God doing this? He's doing it very simple. It's a challenge of faith. Everything in life is always a challenge of faith. And our opportunity now, our obligation, in fact, the only thing that's going to keep you sane and bring the Mashiach is having absolute conviction that nothing is random. Everything comes from Hashem, everything comes from God. And God is doing this to separate. And this is what it says in the book of Daniel, that before the coming of the Mashiach, there will be a separation of the good from the evil. Because beforehand, basically, the way humanity worked is it's gone through 5 stages. Stage number 1 was basically a dog-eat-dog world. That was the world before the flood. That's basically how, if you want to call it ancient man, it's not only all that ancient, but basically it's you could call it tribalism. It becomes, there's an Arab statement, me against my my brother and I against our father and I against our cousin and I against the world. That's the way tribalism works. It's what's called in game theory zero-sum game. You don't see other people as being complementary, and often they're not. You see them as being competitors more than competitors. You see them as being antagonistic. They want to take everything you have, and therefore you have to develop a defense mechanism towards that. And that's exactly what happens. And so that is actually very, very common. It's very common in many Asian countries, certainly very common in China. China only recently united. The Chinese had major, major wars, killing one another for literally millennia. And obviously, the Arab world is very tribal. African world is very tribal. So this tribalism is a very normal thing, actually. As the person who made game theory, one of the greatest geniuses ever, von Neumann, said that you can't complain that people are evil, meaning it's a reaction. If I, God forbid, put you into a boxing ring, how long do you think it would take for you to learn how to be a boxer? Not very long. So people become defensive. They have to defend themselves. So that's one way. That's kind of the worst case scenario, which is almost, in a way, the normal situation unless you get to the next level. And the next level is civilization. Now, civilization is very interesting. Many people don't know this. But civilization really begins with the Torah, with the Bible. The Bible was the first document which created a law and order. Before the Bible, there was no such thing as law and order. Whatever king, again, a king is just a larger tribe. There may be different levels in ancient Egypt, but it was just a tribe. And but here the Bible comes along and says, no, there is such a thing as law and order, right? There's justice for everyone. Every single person has their day in court. They can take anybody, even the king. They can take him to court. Excuse me. And the king is obligated to follow the law. And that's a major innovation. That's not a minor, and that's like transforms reality, because now I don't have to be stronger than the other person to survive. There's a court system. The king has a court system. And all I need to do is basically follow the law. And if somebody breaks the law, I take him to the court, and then the police and everything. There's a whole system to protect my rights. That's a massive, massive, massive thing. And the Bible really becomes the influencing factor in the world. And basically through Christianity, really, the Bible spreads. It spreads to Rome, and Rome is a major world power. Certainly, you think about England. It had the Magna Carta, which is about the idea of law, and that was in 1290, I believe. And of course, England was a Christian country. So the ideas of the Bible, the way that we think that people should have their day in court, that it's only fair to be able to have a law and deal with law as opposed to deal with my sword is bigger than your sword. This is all a biblical innovation. So this is the second step of reality, which is kind of the civilization of humanity. However, there's a third step. And the third step is called spirituality, because the fact is that being civilized in a way is not necessarily something that you did. You were born into a certain circumstance. Hopefully you were born into a circumstance. There are many countries that still, it's based very much on the balance of power. Even the court systems are basically all corrupt. I spoke to somebody from a country. It's like, what about the court system? So he says, yeah, it depends how much you can bribe the judge. So they have court systems, but the whole thing is corrupt. And many, many countries, perhaps a majority of the world, is completely corrupt. So living in a country like America, which is, there's, where it's normal that you get a fair hearing, and this is a great blessing. This is an amazing thing that you can have the confidence. So the bottom line is that even that, in a way, is not really you. That was the society. It took thousands of years to get people to this level where they even have this basic idea. Well, that's how the system should be. So one of the ways you can tell what people are like is if you just took a group of people and you dropped them off, on an island, what kind of a system would they make? So if you took a bunch of Africans, it would just become tribal. Somebody would get the most power, And that person then would become the chief, and everybody would just listen to him, and somebody could depose him, and that's the way that system works. If you're talking about kind of a group of, I don't know, Americans that have this idea of how things are, you vote and you have a democracy and you have a court system, and so that's what they would create. And you see that very clearly with the English, wherever they went, that's the system that they created. So I don't want to be too lengthy, so I'm going to knock this off. So the bottom line is like this, but ultimately the deeper reality is that a person has to seek the truth. And part of what's going on in the world today, a very, very important thing, is that democracy and the world that we live in, civilization and civility, which is a great thing compared to barbarism, it's a wonderful thing. It's still, relative to the next level, it's nothing. Just like barbarism relative to civility is nothing, so too civility relative to what I'm going to tell you now is nothing. And that is to independently, irrespective of everyone and everything, to know the truth. And this is my saying, a Jew, base this on who Abraham was. A Jew is someone who lives for the truth and is ready to die for the truth. In other words, if you're just copying what everybody else does, so what happens if your civilization, like Nazi Germany, tells you, okay, well, we got a new rule, kill Jews. And most people follow that. We're not just talking stupid people, we're talking doctors, professors, scientists, because again, you're just doing what's comfortable for you. So you have to get beyond the comfort zone. You have to get into the truth zone. And the truth zone takes a lot of effort. It says, those who seek the truth will find them. So, the world that we have right now, we are right before the coming of the Mashiach. It is our great privilege. The Baal Shem Tov says, whatever we do in this lifetime means now, before the coming of Mashiach. Listen very carefully to what I'm saying. This may be the most important thing you will ever hear if you implement it. Whatever we do today, before the revelation of the Mashiach, which changes, basically brings heaven to earth. Excuse me. Whatever we do today becomes whatever we do forever. Because now you have free choice. So Mashiach's going to come, everybody, conversion ends when Mashiach comes. You can't convert to Judaism because everybody's going to want to be a Jew. Everybody's going to want to be the best. There's like the choice, freedom of choice is right here, right now, really right now. After you finish watching this video, ask yourself one question, the most important question of your life. If you could write your job description, what you will do forever, what would that be? And that, my friends, and don't think about a career, because money is going to mean nothing when Mashiach comes. Everybody's going to have everything, right? Just like animals have all their needs, everything will be provided for. The question is, what is your spiritual path forever?